What's going on, guys? Today, for the first lesson that you're going to take notes on, we are going to talk about how to find the x-intercepts of a quadratic. This should be something that you already know how to do. We learned how to do this last semester, so we're going to do a quick um, lesson to refresh your memory on how to do it, and it's also going to help us segue into the next lesson. All right, so make sure you title your notes x-intercepts of a quadratic, like I wrote on my board, or how to find the x-intercepts of a quadratic. And we're going to review how to do it in all three forms. So I left the graph over here on the right just so you can see what's going on. The very first form we're looking at is factored form. And that's the easiest form to find the x-intercepts in. So I'm going to go ahead and write factored form equation. By the way, there's three other words that represent x-intercepts. One of them is called roots. Okay, roots. The other one's called zeros. And the last one is called solutions. It's such an important thing that we literally just call, if I'm saying what are the solutions of this quadratic, I'm asking what are the x-intercepts. So all three of these words are the same thing as this. So make sure you write this in your notes that those are interchangeable. If I say, hey, what are the roots? It's the same thing as saying what are the x-intercepts. All right off the bat in factored form, we get this for free, right? So we should automatically know what the answer is before I even pump this out. We get the answers from right here. Okay, really what we're doing and why it's called the zeros is because you're supposed to plug in, to find x-intercepts for any quadratic, you plug in 0 for y. And so you say, hey, where does this equal 0? Okay, where does this equation equal 0? We know what the answer is. We can see it over here on the right-hand side of our screen right here. One of them's here and one of them's here. If you know that you're multiplying two things together, then if I make this equal 0, I'm good to go, because 0 times anything else is 0. Or if I make this side equal 0, 0 times anything is also 0. So the real way to look at this is, and I don't know if we've even done it this way, is to write these separately. If I can make this equal 0, I'm good. Or if I can make this equal 0, I'm good. Either one is fine. So we're going to go ahead and solve both of these and get our answer and then go back up and talk about how the answer was super easy. So to get the answer here, we just add 7 to both sides. This cancels. And we're left with 7 equals x, or x equals 7. Okay. To get x by itself on the bottom one, we just add 11 to both sides of the equation, right? And we get 11 equals x. So we have two answers. One of them is 11 and one of them is 7. And we already knew that because they're the opposites of these, right? Okay, so make sure you remember that's the opposites of those in factored form. But all you have to do is set your each factor equal to 0, like we did, and then solve, and that's really the way to do it. All right, if you're not done with your notes, go ahead and pause. I'm going to move on to the next form. So that was factored form, right? Factored form. Let me write that here for you. Factored form. All right. So moving on. Let's not do that. Let's just do this. Let's do a different form. Let's say that our equation is in vertex form. Y equals x minus 9 squared minus 4. Let's go ahead and use the same concept we did. We said that to solve for an x-intercept, you plug in 0 for y. And if you're wondering what the heck that's all about, look at the y values over here in Desmos. Every y value is always 0 if you're looking at an x-intercept. If you're sitting on the x-axis, your y value is always 0. So if I'm asking what the x-intercept is, I'm also saying, hey, whenever y is 0, what does x equal? All right, so I'm going to replace my y with 0. And then I'm going to go ahead and solve in the exact same way I just did with the two problems above by getting x by itself. So we have to work in reverse PEMDAS. Whenever you solve an equation, you have to work in reverse PEMDAS. So take care of all addition and subtraction first. So go ahead and add 4 to both sides. Okay, this cancels. You get 4 equals x minus 9 squared. Now this entire thing is being squared, so you can't do anything until you get nothing happens here, and then finally you can come up to the exponent and you can say, okay, how do I get rid of that squared? Well, to save you time, you may know the opposite of a squared is a square root. Okay, we're going to square root both sides. The square root of 4 is 2. And the square root, this cancels. That was the whole point of all that, and we're left with x minus 9. Last step of getting x by itself. Hopefully you guys are like, oh, cool, we're going to add 9 to both sides. And now we get x equals 11. That's interesting. Only got one answer this time. Where's the other answer? Let's click this graph over here and see. 11 is one of our answers. But where the heck did this 7 go? How do we solve that and get both of our answers? We're making one tiny mistake that you haven't probably learned about yet. So go ahead and make sure you write this down, that if you square root both sides, you always have to plus or minus. Okay, you always have to plus or minus. So on this step right here, I needed to put a plus or minus sign whenever I square rooted. Okay. So if you square root both sides, you might want to write this in your notes. Both sides, comma, you must use plus and minus. Okay, you must use plus or minus. And so I don't know, in your notes you might want to give yourself one of these bad boys. This is what I usually do. But there's an example of it right there. Okay, so if you square root both sides, you must use plus or minus. Okay, so if we did do that, plus or minus the square root of 4 means plus or minus 2. Okay, plus or minus 2. And now we have two equations. We already solved for one of them. It was using the positive 2. But we didn't solve for this one. Negative 2 equals x minus 9. So I solved for a positive 2 equals x minus 9, but now I have to solve for the negative 2. Now go ahead and add 9 to both sides, and you get 7 equals x. And there's my other answer. So you get both answers if you remember what we put right here. If you remember this, then you're going to get both answers. If not, you're only going to get one answer, and you're not going to get it right. Now, I know you're thinking, what the heck's up with that plus or minus? Why do we have to do that? Okay, make sure you pause if you don't have this in your notes because you need this. Okay, let's talk about that, and then we're going to go on to this last one. If I told you the square root of 9, what does that even mean? What does the square root of 9 even mean? Think about that. What does it mean? Okay, some people are saying, oh, well, the answer is 3. Well, why is the answer 3? Because the square root of 9 means what number, I guess you could say, what number multiplied by itself equals 9? Well, 3 multiplied by itself, 3 times 3 is 9. But there's also another number that multiplies to get it. And the answer is negative 3, because negative 3 times negative 3 is also positive 9. So if you square root something, there's actually 2 answers. Okay, 2 answers. And that's why you have to do plus or minus. So the square root of 9 actually equals plus or minus 3. Okay, it doesn't actually equal 3. It actually equals positive or negative 3. So that's why that works the way it does. All right. So now just to go back, didn't want to do that at all. just to go back, we checked out how to do the x-intercepts / roots, zeros, or solutions in factored form. Then we looked at it in vertex form, right? Vertex form, you just solve. And now we're going to go to standard form. Ooh, let's put that right there, standard form. All right, now let's talk about standard form. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to solve it incorrectly. So before you get your notes all pretty, let's talk about y equals x squared minus 18x plus 77. Looks so difficult, right? How do you find the x-intercepts for that? Okay. Well, let's just make it easy on ourselves for the sake of the video. It's the exact same parabola. So we know what the x-intercepts are, but typically let's just set it equal to 0 like we did everything else. And now if we did want to get x by itself, well, most students would get this far. They'd say, okay, we're going to subtract 77 from both sides. And then you'd get this. And this is where students would usually get confused. And why is that? Because you have an x here and you have an x here. And those are not like terms. So you cannot combine those, right? So there must be a different way to do this. This is the incorrect method. Incorrect. Okay? The way we usually do it is, and it's going to look familiar to you, is we factor, right? We say what two numbers add to get negative 18, but also multiply to get positive 77. And since we already know the numbers, we know the numbers are 7 and 11, right? Then typically we would have to figure out what to put here. X plus 7 hold on, my bad, not 7 and 11. It'd be negative 7 and negative 11, actually. So then we'd have to put x minus 7 and x minus 11. Okay, so we know that those are the two numbers that make this true. And now we can set it equal to 0. And now we can figure out simply that the answers were 7 and 11, just like we did in the very, very first part of this example, right? So that is what we know so far. We know how to factor. We know how to take factored form and find the solutions. And we just learned how to do vertex form. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you one more equation here in vertex form because it's the one that you're probably least familiar with. And all I want you to do is tell me what the solutions are, what the x-intercepts are, right? So this is kind of a long video, and I'm assuming that you're taking good notes on it because you just watched a video on taking notes. And then after we're done, you're going to do the assignment that I give you, and it's just going to be all about how to find the solutions. It's going to be factoring and the vertex form one mostly because factored form is obviously just kind of a gimme. All right, so here we go. All right, so I put two quadratics in vertex form up on the screen. This is number 1. This is the one that I definitely want you guys to do, and this is the one for you guys who think that you're really, really good at this. So pause the video, see what you get, and then I'm going to go over both of these. Go ahead. All right, so right off the bat, you should have set this equal to 0. Hopefully that was your first step. And if you forgot to do that and now you want to give it a shot, feel free to pause at any time and try and finish it. The more you can do by yourself, the better. All right, now you're going to get x by itself, so we're going to go ahead and add 16 to both sides. Okay, and this all canceled, and I get 16 equals x minus 9 squared. And now I have to get rid of the squared, so I'm going to square root both sides. Don't forget to plus or minus. Okay, you don't care about the side with the x on it. You care about the side you're going to keep. The x side, you're going to get rid of everything. Okay, so the square root of 16 is 4. And over here, you're just left with negative 9. Okay. Oh, sorry, you're not left with negative 9. You're left with x minus 9. That was my bad. All right, last step, you're going to add 9 to both sides. Okay, so this cancels, and you're left with 9 plus or minus 4 equals x. Okay, you're going to have two answers. One of them is 9 plus 4, and one of them is 9 minus 4. And those are going to be your two answers, right? So one of them is 13, and one of them is 5. Okay, so those should have been your two answers. Hopefully you guys got that. If you need one more, actually I'm going to give you a bunch in the homework or in the classwork. All right, at this point, guys, if you didn't want to nerd out and do this one, because we're going to get a more complex answer for this one, you can totally stop the video and go work on the assignment. Make sure you got your notes down because they're really important and they're going to help you with the assignment. And next week, we're going to get into the whole reason that we did this, because we're going to learn about something totally new, a new way to find solutions. They're going to help you with a problem like number 2. And I'll tell you right now before you leave, number 2 here doesn't have nice, beautiful solutions like 13 and 5. It's going to be something different. So feel free to leave. All right, this is for the rest of you. Let's actually just make this big because whatever. All right, here we go. We're going to do the same exact thing, and we're going to set it equal to 0. It's very similar at first. And now we're going to add 18 to both sides. Okay, add 18 to both sides to get rid of this. And we get 18 equals x minus 10 squared. Now, whenever we square root both sides, don't forget to plus or minus, we're just left with plus or minus square root of 18 equals x minus 10. Don't forget, this all canceled out, right? Okay. And we'll simplify square root of 18 here in a second if we need to. Lastly, we're going to add 10 to both sides. So we're just going to add 10 to both sides. And then here is our answer. But we're not probably quite done. So x equals 10 plus or minus the square root of 18. Remember, we have two answers here. So the square root of 18 could be able to be reduced. It isn't a nice number, but it could be reduced. And remember, the way we do that is we factor tree. Okay, so we're going to say 9 and 2, 3 and 3, and look, we do have a pair. So this turned into 3 square roots of 2. That replaces this. Okay, you're always going to want to put it in simplified form. So x equals 10 plus or minus, not the square root of 18, but 3 square roots of 2. You can leave your answer like this, or you can say x equals 10 plus 3 square roots of 2 and 10 minus 3 square roots of 2. And now you have your answer. So this one wasn't as pretty. If you gave me a decimal, I don't know what it is. I don't think my calculator works on here. Let's try and pop it open. Oh, I guess it does. So let's say 10 plus the square root of 18. So 14.24 was one of your answers. And 10 minus 5.75. So if you got those two decimals, you got it right. If not, maybe you can see what mistake you made and go from there. All right, guys, go ahead and go work on the assignment. Thanks for watching. Until next time, adios.